Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be telling you about my top 10 books of 2020. This was really hard. I read a lot of really good books in 2020. I read a lot of books in general. I read a total of 276 books in 2020 and a lot of them were really good, and I just really struggled to get my top 10 down to 10. So yeah, I mean, some of them that were some of my favourites of the year have ended up going in my most surprising, so make sure you keep your eyes open for that video coming out soon, because basically they were some of my favourites, but they were more surprising than anything to me because I wasn't expecting to like them as much as I did. So they've gone in that video instead, but do keep your eyes open for that one. But yeah, so we're going to start off from 10. This is a very rough top 10. Like, my top 4 are solid, absolutely solid. Their positions are 100% and have been that way all year. Well, as I've been reading them, obviously some of them have been coming up, but the positions have been solid. However, the last 6 are probably a little bit fluid, so we're going to go through them. Don't take the numbers too seriously apart from the top 4, but yeah, the first one, so in position number 10, I have Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. I really enjoyed Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is the first in this series, which I think I also read in 2020 as well. I absolutely loved it, but this one is my favourite in the series so far. I really enjoyed this. We're following Dani Brown, who is one of the Brown sisters, which is the series that we are following, and she is a lecturer at a college, and there is a new security guard there called Zaf, and basically Dani gets stuck in a lift one day during a workplace fire drill, and she obviously was not checking her emails at the time, and when she found out that this was going to be a drill, she ended up getting in the lift and Zaf has to save her. He carries her out of the building, and her new hashtag ends up going around Twitter, basically shipping them 100%, and the hashtag is Dr. Rugbae, spelt B-A-E. Because Zaf used to be a rugby player, and basically they end up fake dating to try and keep this trend going and things like that, and keep the people happy, and they end up blossoming into something more. This is queer in the sense that Dani is bi, and I just really loved this a whole lot. I loved Dani, I loved Zaf. Zaf is my new book boyfriend, and I am just 100% here for this story. I just loved everything about it. I loved the way that these two got on, the chemistry between them, the writing style of Talia Hibbert is incredible. I really want to read everything she ever writes now. I'd really need to go back and read her backlist, but just really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. Obviously all the books on this list are 5 stars, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I just needed, because the rest of these are all sci-fi or fantasy, and I just needed there to be a contemporary romance on here, and this was the one I picked. So I really loved this a whole heckin' ton, and I really highly recommend the series. Do read Get a Life, Chloe Brown though if you're thinking about picking this one up, because that's the first one. You follow Chloe Brown and then you follow Dani, but Dani is in Chloe's story, so do make sure you pick that one up first. This is the second in a series, and you kind of need to read them in order really, and I really enjoyed it. It was amazing. Coming in 9th place, we have From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L Armentrout. I don't think anyone's surprised to see this on here, but I really enjoyed this story. We are following Poppy, who essentially is supposed to be like an untouched woman. She needs to be a virgin, she's going to ascend, and she has been protected and for a very long time. However, Poppy is a bit of a rebel, and she doesn't want to be this way. She doesn't want to live a life like this. She wants to be touched, and she wants to be loved, and she wants to enjoy herself and just be a normal girl. And she ends up going out and going to this club and gambling and things like that, and then her guard ends up walking in, and she is covered, she's got like a mask on and stuff, she's protected, but she ends up managing to hide upstairs and getting herself locked in a room with this guy who she recognises as one of the guardsmen, a different guardsman for a different area of the guardsmen's. What? And she ends up kissing him, And then a few days go by, she has this handmaiden called Tawny, who's just one of my favourite characters ever. I just really, really love Tawny. I love a sassy side character. I'm obsessed with them. So she's got this handmaiden called Tawny, who she ends up telling all of this to, and Tawny's like buzzing about it. She just thinks it's the best thing ever. And then the guy ends up being her new guard. And this story just kind of goes from there. There is a lot more to it than just the romance, but I really, really enjoyed the romance in here. The other thing I loved about this story is the way that all the way through the story, you are not actually sure what kind of monsters are in this, like who the bad guys are and what form of paranormal creature they take. You are not sure, and you don't find out until around about like this section of the book. Like, it's way into the book before you find out, and just the way that it is told and the way you find it out is incredible, and I really, really enjoyed that entire aspect. I thought it was very, very clever. Cannot wait to pick up A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, but I want to wait until a Crowns Guild. I can't remember what it's called. Something along Crowns and Guild. I want to wait till that comes out, which I think is in April, possibly. I can't remember. But I'm going to reread From Blood and Ash and then read Kingdom of Flesh and Fire and read the new one back to back so that I can get the whole story. Because everyone's saying that Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was better than this, and I need the next one in my hands before I pick up Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. So I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it if you are looking for fantasy romance. This will be right up your alley. Then I've got Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. I really, really loved this. I ended up with an arc of this book, so thank you again to Horror for sending me a physical copy of this. This is not the physical copy they sent me. I've still got that. It's on my shelves. But this is the Fairy Loot edition, which is absolutely stunning and one of my prettiest books on my shelves, probably the prettiest book on my shelves, and I really, really love this story. This is following twin sisters Amelia and Victoria, who work for their grandmother's Sicilian restaurant. They work there, and one day Victoria doesn't come in for a shift, and Amelia ends up finding her sister Victoria's body and finding her dead, and realizes that she's gone way too far with the dark magic and she wants to find the killer. Amelia ends up playing a little bit with the dark magic and summoning a prince of hell called Prince Wrath, and he says that he will help her try and find the killer, but it turns out that he has another agenda and things go from there. I friggin' love this book. I loved the way that it weaved romance and also family, but also the Sicilian restaurant side of things as well. I was starving all the way through this book. I could have just eaten and I was starving again, because there are like excerpts of recipes and she talks about what they made and then how they made it, exactly what was in it. It was incredible, and alongside the entire package for this that I got from Hodder was incredible, because they teamed up with Pasta Evangelis, who is an incredible pasta company that you can get like monthly pasta dishes from them or weekly pasta dishes from them every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, whichever you prefer. And it's just an incredible company. I really enjoy them. I treat myself every now and then to some of their pasta dishes, and I was starving all the way through this, so hungry. But overall, I loved this story. I loved everything about it. I assume that this is going to be a series, but I'm not 100% sure, so I can't wait for the next one. But I will definitely be rereading this before the next one comes out, if there is a next one. I think there's going to be. I hope there is. But I just love Kerry's writing style. This is completely different to the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, so if you didn't enjoy this, I would still recommend picking this one up. It's a completely different story, completely different writing style. It's almost like Kerry is a different person between writing Stalking Jack the Ripper and writing Kingdom of the Wicked. Honestly, two different writing styles. Incredible. Loved it. 100% would highly recommend. Next we have another second in series, and this time it is Aurora Burning by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is the second in the Aurora Cycle series, the first one being Aurora Rising, and this one is following essentially what I would call a band of misfits. This entire team were brought together in book one essentially, and they were kind of thrown together. The leader of the group ended up making a bit of a mess of being able to pick his team, which would have been like his top tier team, and he made a bit of a mess of it. He went out to clear his head after an exam one day in a ship and this is a sci-fi by the way, in a ship, and ended up coming across an SOS call. He then stopped at the ship, went into the ship to see what was going on, and found a load of cryopods where everybody in the cryopods had died except for one person. He rescued the cryopod, took it back to the place where he is in the Aurora Legion, and basically he saved a girl called Aurora. And it turns out she's been on that ship for 200 years and she has no idea. She thinks it was like yesterday that she went to sleep, and it's not. It's been 200 years. Her entire race and everything, she's no idea what happened to them, and they appear to have been wiped out of the system as if they never existed. And she's very, very confused about this, and basically her and the team are trying to find out what happened, and things go very, very south, and this carries on straight on from that. But what I loved about this one, I gave Aurora Rising 4 stars, but I gave this one 5 on the basis that I really, really loved that we got to know the characters a lot more in this one, and they really, really became a found family in this. Like, it was towards the end of the first one that really happened, but in this one you really, really see it, and I really, really loved that. We're following several different types of characters, but also several different races as well, really coming together and making it work, and I just loved that aspect of this book. And I just really, really think, I just really love found family. I really enjoy it, and this one nailed it. It was so good, and I just really highly recommend this series, especially if you are a fan of the Illuminae Files anyway by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I think you'll enjoy this series. It is YA, but I do think that even if you didn't get on with the Illuminae Files because of the way it was told, I do think you'll enjoy this because it isn't told in multimedia per se. It is told like a normal story. However, you do on occasion, you might get like the odd, the odd section that might be like a little bit, it's just telling you useful information, but in a very, very comical way. So yeah, I highly recommend this series. I love it so much. I can't wait to see what character we get next on the next one. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is the Forbidden Planet edition, so that's why it's yellow and not, is the original one orange? I can't remember. Book number 6 might be a surprise to some of y'all, because it's a surprise to me. This could have gone in my most surprising books of 2020, but I really wanted it in my best books because it was a surprise. It might show up in that list anyway, I don't know. I'm trying not to cross over too much with these, but it might show up in there anyway because it is a massive surprise to me, but also it is one of my best books of 2020, and that is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I know that Ashley and Molly are going to be buzzing about this. I loved this. I have put this series off for so long. I don't know why. I think I just thought that I would not like it, and I just got no idea what it was about it that I didn't think I would like. So I think the other thing as well that put me off a little bit was the fact that it's nowhere near close to being finished. So I know The Mask Fallen is coming out this month in January. However, there are another 3 books yet to come out for this series. As far as I'm aware, this is a 7-book series. So I've still got some time to wait until this series finishes. And if there is several books already out in the series, I tend to just wait until the whole thing is done, and then I can binge them all because that's the way I like to do my reading, because I'm impatient. However, we are where we are with it. So I read The Pale Dreamer in, when did I read? I read The Pale Dreamer in December, gave that 4 stars, and I'm so glad I read that first because there's a high possibility I would have DNF'd this had I not read that first. Ashley very kindly recommended to me after I asked her the best way to read this, the order to read it in. She said you could read The Pale Dreamer at any point in time, but if you aren't into your info dumpy books, which I am not, I struggle a lot with info dump and also with like high fantasy-ish type books, then read The Pale Dreamer first because it's a great introduction, and I highly recommend doing it that way around. I really, really love this. This is following a clairvoyant called Paige Mahoney, and in The Pale Dreamer she's 16 years old, but in this one she's 19, so we're following her a few years later. And basically I can't tell you too much about what happens in this one because It's not in the synopsis and I don't want to spoil it, but basically she is part of a crew in London called the Seven Dials who go out and do different missions and stuff, and they live in a world where it's a dystopian type world. This is classified as a dystopia, and they live in a world where humans are and clairvoyants are living together, but it appears that they might not be the only types of people that are living in this world. And I really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. Just everything about it. I love the characters. I hate the characters I love. I love the characters I hate. Like, it gives me a lot of feelings, and you can see the feelings that this is giving me. Like, I tabbed this book up to death. I don't think I've ever tabbed a book all the way through up like it. I did it with the Mime Order as well. So 5 out of 5 stars for this. Really loved it. Highly recommend if you are into your clairvoyancy and fantasy dystopia type stuff. You'll love it. It was great. I had a good time. Then I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I'm not sure if anyone's surprised about seeing this on here. I get the feeling it's going to be on a lot of people's lists this year. I really enjoyed this. This is following Linus Baker, who is a caseworker at the Department of Magical Youth. Department in charge of magical youth, and basically he gets sent out by the extremely upper management one day to go to the house in the Cerulean Sea, and he has to stay there several weeks and basically find out what's going on there. They're very concerned because they think that these children are going to bring about the end of time, but they don't give Linus the full ins and outs of his mission. He also needs to keep his eye on the person that's looking after the kids as well, who is Arthur, and this is just very wholesome, very warm and fluffy and adorable and hilarious, and I just had the best time with it. If I am ever feeling shit, having a bad day, in a slump, this is going to be one of the books I now pick up because it's incredible. I just really loved it. I had the best time. The kids are amazing. Lucy's fantastic. I just love how sassy he is. It was so good. And this is also queer as well because Linus and Arthur things ensue, and I just had the best time. This has been described as middle grade for adults. Like, it's just so good, and I just highly recommend picking this one up. It's incredible. I really loved it so much. Right, we're into the top 4 now, so this is where it's like solid 100%. This has been the order all the way through the year. Well, the books have gradually been going down the pecking order as I've read newer books, but this is solid, written in stone, top 4. So the first one we've got is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I don't know how many of you are going to be surprised about this one. I am not. I knew before I picked this up that I was going to love this book. I picked this up because Maddie loved this book, and I was like, shit, I need to pick this book up. This is essentially been sold as a love story to New York City. Now, if you know me and you've been here for a while, you will know that I am completely and utterly, irrevocably in love with New York City. It is the love of my life. If I could live anywhere in the world, it would be New York City. So I really loved this. This is a very complicated sci-fi / fantasy-esque type book, and it's very hard to explain exactly what's going on in here. It's probably easier if I read you the synopsis. I don't know if that fully explains it, but I'll read it you anyway because it's only short. But this basically says, in Manhattan, a grad student gets off the train and realises he doesn't remember who he is, where he's from, or even his own name. But he can sense the beating heart of the city, see its history and feel its power. In the Bronx, a gallery director discovers strange graffiti scattered throughout the city, so beautiful and powerful it's as if the painting is calling to her. In Brooklyn, a politician and mother finds she can hear the songs of her city, pulsing to the beat of her Louboutin heels. And they're not the only ones. Every great city has a soul. Some are ancient as myths, the others are as new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 6. And it's just incredible, so cleverly done. The way it all weaves together is fantastic. N.K. Jemisin's writing is insane, like so good. This is the first time I've ever read from N.K. Jemisin before, so I'm really excited to dive into the 5th season, but I don't know if this is going to be part of a series or not. I don't know if it's a standalone, but I really hope there's some more from this because I just loved it. I loved being back in New York. I loved recognising the places where they were and just being in the different parts of the city. I just loved it so much. It was so good. So yeah, highly recommend this one. Really enjoyed it, especially if you love New York. I just generally think that you will love this, so highly recommend. In third place we have Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. I loved this fucking book. I read this in one day. Kind of wish I'd taken my time with it a little bit more, but I know that the second time I read it I'm going to love it even more, and I will take my time with it. I do want to reread this very, very soon, but I'm going to wait until probably just before the second one is coming out, or just as the second one has come out, so that I can read them back to back. But I loved this book so much. So yeah, we're following Bryce, who I think, if I remember correctly, is half fae. She lives in a time where the strict class of angel, fae, shifters and humans all sort of live together, and she's a massive party girl. And then one day her best friend is murdered, and we basically follow her going through the motions of this, and then we jump 2 years in the future when the supposed killer has been arrested, and the city's leaders then ask Bryce to help them in the investigation, and they assign a fallen angel to her who is Hunt, and to help her out with the investigation, and things kind of go from there. There is a romance that ensues, but there is a lot of complicated other stuff going on in here as well, and I just loved this. I loved everything about it. I loved the way that Sarah J Maas broke my heart. Like 90 pages in, I just broke in half. I was devastated, and I don't think I fully recovered from it yet either, and I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I love the way Sarah J Maas made me feel all of the things all the way through this book, and I just have no idea where this is going to go next, and I cannot wait to pick the next one up. So I highly recommend picking this one up if you haven't done so already, if you are into your like fae and angels and, you know, mixed paranormal type books. This is fantastic. I loved it. It was my favourite book of the year until I picked up the other two books that I'm going to tell you about in a second. So I highly recommend, please pick this up if you haven't done so already. You're going to love it. In second place, this was in first place not for long, in all honesty, but this book shook me to my core, and it still does now. I can't remember what month I read this in. It might have been September or October. Could have been earlier than that. However, this is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. This is my first dabble with Kay Ancrum. I have since read The Way of the Stars, and I'm highly anticipating Darling, but I loved this so much. This book shook me to my core. I was not expecting it to do what it did, and I just loved it a whole lot. Basically, this book is following two boys who are best friends, August and Jack, and they kind of come from two different circles. Jack is kind of like a bit of a jock. He's on the football team, things like that. August is a bit of a nerd, kind of, you know, outside of Jack's circle, but together outside of school they sort of roll together and always have done since they were kids, and they are the best of friends. Jack, however, has been having these very strange hallucinations and just cannot seem to figure out what's going on, and he thinks he's in like a fantasy world, and he's struggling to figure out what's happening. He thinks he kind of lives in this fantasy world, can see these things going on, and August really wants to help him. However, Jack manages to convince August that he can help him out. If they just do this one mission and get this one thing, the hallucinations should stop, and August has been convinced by Jack that this is the way to kind of go about it rather than seeking medical help. And they have other friends around them who are trying to help them out, actually like properly help them out professionally. However, August just wants to do it the way that Jack wants to do it because he thinks that's the best way for him, and things just kind of go from there. And it's just incredible. Very, very, very cleverly done. It will play with your mind like you would not believe, and I just cried and cried and cried at the end of this book. The author's note shook me to my core. There is a clip of me kind of reading the author's note out to you guys, and it just really, really shook me to my core. I loved this so much. It was incredible. The other thing that I love about it as well is as Jack's hallucinations get worse and worse throughout the book, the pages get darker and darker. So as you can see, like towards the end of the book, the pages are black, but as you go through the book, you can see how his hallucinations are progressing essentially and getting worse and worse. And I just think that's such a clever way of doing that with the pages. It just, I've never seen anything like it. I've never read anything like this before. It was incredible, and I just, it shook me. I loved it so much. It was incredible. So yeah, second favourite book of the year. I loved it a lot. If you've been here a while, you can probably predict what my favourite book of the year was. And yeah, I'm not sorry about it, in all honesty. I am a little bit sorry it's bumped The Wicker King down a bit, but honestly, I just fucking love this book a whole heckin' ton. It was incredible, and I just love it a lot. And it's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. This is the first time I'd ever sort of fully dipped my toe into V. Schwab. I have read her middle grade series, and this was the first time that I was picking something up by her that was adult, or, you know, older than middle grade, and I loved this a lot. We're following Addie LaRue, who basically is about to be married off by her parents. She's kind of a little bit older than she should be for marrying off at the time when this should be happening. It's the early 1700s. She's about to be married off to a man who's already got 3 kids and is looking for a mother for his 3 kids because his wife passed during childbirth. And she does not want to get married. She wants to go and see the world. She wants to see what's out there and see what the world can offer her. Makes a deal with a demon to basically have more time. She wants more time to belong to nobody, but because she hasn't fully specified exactly what she wants, the demon has basically, he gets out of it her soul at the end. When she's done with it, he can have her soul, and essentially he wants to make this as difficult as possible for her so that she gives up her soul sooner, so that he can have it. That's his intention. So he makes her immortal, and also so that nobody can remember her. So she ends up, to spite him, she's got way more patience than I have. To spite him, we end up following her during 2 different timelines. We follow her through the story of how this happened, and then what happened to her following that, and then 300 years later in New York City. This starts off in France. We follow her 300 years later in New York City, where she finally meets a person who can remember her, and it shakes her to a core because she spent these last 300 years with nobody remembering her. Not a single person remembers who she is. And basically what this book did for me was, I know some people have found it a little bit tedious and a bit boring, because actually not a great deal happens in this. It is just storytelling, and I get that. I get how that would bug some people and annoy some people. What I loved about this was that it constantly made me think throughout the book, oh my god, she can't even have a house. She can't even have a wardrobe, because she can't have a job to maintain those things, because nobody can remember her. So she goes in for an interview. The minute she walks out of that interview, they don't remember her. Little things like that. Oh my god. And then I sat there and started thinking, what would it be like for people not to remember me? Like, to start off with the book, I was like, that would be really fun. But then as I got further into the book, I was like, this is extremely depressing, and I just don't know how she's gone on this long. But she's doing it to spite the demon because she doesn't want to give him her soul. And I just loved it. It was incredible, and I really, really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of this book. I really, really loved it so much. I know not everybody feels the same way about it, but I just got a lot out of it. I really, really loved it so much. I'm very passionate about this book, I think you can. This is the only book I own more than 2 copies of, because I own 3 copies of it, and I'm not sorry about it. But yeah, I highly recommend this one. So that was my favourite book of the year of 2020. I feel like you won't be surprised about some of those, but do let me know in the comments down below if you are surprised about any of them, if you expected to see a different book on this list from me because of some of the things that I've said throughout the year, because I might have forgotten about one, which would be a shame. If any of them you were predicting, obviously I have gone on and on and on for the last few months about the fact that The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is my favourite book of the year, and also about the fact that The Wicker King was my favourite book of the year. So you're probably expecting those 2, but let me know in the comments down below if any that surprised you, any that you weren't expecting, any that you were expecting that you didn't see. Let me know, and I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I shall see you next time. Bye for now.